Listen to this episode if you are currently selling wholesale, or maybe you have thought about selling wholesale and you just aren't quite sure if it's actually right for you. This episode is going to be a little bit of a spicy take. I actually recorded it once already, and right now I am re-recording it because by the end of it, I felt like I had a lot more to say in a better structure. And so I am going to put my notes down and really just riff on this topic. And this is something that was submitted by one of my people, one of my gals, one of my business owners within the small business community. And they really had this wonderful question and they brought it up, and I've started to talk about it with my clients. And I had a situation where one of my clients came in and she kind of took the advice of everybody should be wholesale. If you want to grow, try to get as many wholesale opportunities as possible. But yet we looked at her pricing structure and she was actually losing money for every single sale that she was doing for wholesale. And so I wanted to bring this here. I think that it's a really important conversation to have. And I think I can bring some good insight to it for somebody that works with people that are trying to get into Urban Outfitters and Anthropologie and Sam's Club, and that has helped businesses do that, as well as coming from somebody that works with people that are making $1,000, $3,000, and that are really starting their business online and trying to grow that way as well, talking about when is the time to actually build into wholesale. First things first, if you're new here, I just want to say hello and a good little warm welcome. My name is Madison Page. I'm a business growth specialist, and I preach building a ride or die community around your brand, and I help businesses grow of all kinds, but mostly product-based businesses. Today, I'm sporting a nice little sexy rasp to my voice, the courtesy of the pollen and whatever spring everything going on outside, so you're going to have to bear with me a little bit. I am feeling a little raspy today, but the podcast must go on. I like to teach in a fun conversational type of way. I like to say it's kind of like sipping coffee with a biz bestie. I'm sharing raw and real and genuine business advice from somebody that has now been working in businesses for, oh my gosh, like 15 years, which is crazy to say. I feel old saying that. Somebody that has worked with hundreds of business owners very intimately and really diving into this topic. When it comes to wholesale, customarily within the industry, and of course it's different for everybody, but really if we're looking at like the industry average, is that you are selling your product at 50% of your overall cost. So if your product is $10, you sell it to these people for $5 and they put it in their store. They then put it elsewhere. And of course, some people do 30%, some people do 50%. But honestly, if you are not doing 50%, a lot of times I see people try to do 30%. And then when they do 30%, they just don't get as many opportunities because of course that person still needs to make profit on it as well. And they want to make a 50% profit on everything within their store as well. So what we are really looking here is a numbers game. And this numbers game comes down to understanding your overall profits. The part that I am not anti-wholesale. I help a lot of people get into wholesale stores. I think it's a wonderful place to be, but you have to know your numbers. You have to know your finances, and you have to know like if it really makes sense for you from a pricing perspective. We're going to talk pricing. We're going to talk time. We're going to talk efficiency. And we're going to talk about what it really takes to bring something to market in a wholesale and what wholesale is traditionally really utilized for. So again, going back to that, if you have a product that is $10 and let's say it costs you $4 to make that item for all of the labor, all of your costs of goods, all of your overhead, your operating expenses, it costs $4 to make that item, right? Like top to bottom, A to Z, completed, done. We can deliver it to a customer, $4, and you sell that item on your website for $10, and then you sell it wholesale at a 50% wholesale discount. You are only making $1 on every item that you sell. And on your website, you're making $6. So you need to sell 6 of those items for every single one item that you could sell on your website. And so what happens here is that people say, okay, I want to start making sales. I want to try to get into some stores. I think that it would be helpful because they're going to buy 100 of them at a time. So if you sell 100 items at $5 a piece, that's a $500 order, but you're only making $100 profit on that. And when on your own website, if you sell $100 and you were making $6 profit, you would make $600 of profit on that, meaning $600 is going into your bank account, into savings, into reinvesting into your business versus $100. So in my eyes, it makes more sense. It's not the most efficient way to actually build a business and get the cash flow to be able to fund your business to actually become mass market. And so you have to have a really good idea of what's going on within your business, within your numbers, within your pricing, within your profits. My question for you immediately is, well, what's your profit margin on your item? My question immediately is, what did you take into account when it comes to profits? Is that talking about your labor and your operating costs and your overhead? Is all of that built into there? Because if you don't have it, then that $1 is just going back to actually running your business. And a lot of times it's not actually covering all of the full costs. So again, there's different formulas to create what your pricing model is. And a lot of times people don't actually take into account labor, operating costs, and all of that within their pricing model. It's just a costs of goods sold model. And so that is something we have to take into account of what is your pricing model? What is your overall profit margin? And a lot of times you're taking a major hit on your products that are out there. You're taking a major hit on the profit that you are selling as a wholesale account. My question for you is, why are you selling wholesale? Is it so you can try to get some cash back into the business? Or is it that you're trying to use it for brand awareness? Is it that, like, what is your purpose for wholesale? If you're like, well, I'm just trying to make some money, wholesale is not the way that you want to put your time and your effort into to make some money. I would rather you focus on growing an online community that you're making full profit for. They're going to come back, they love your brand, or they're going to talk about your brand and really have a connection to them, be a lifelong customer, and then they can come back and want to buy from you at full profit over and over and over again. Another thing that we want to talk about is time. When you get an order of 100 items or 400 items or whatever it might be, that takes you a really long time to make. It takes you away from actually being able to work on your business. I hear it all the time. People are like, Maddie, I'm not making much money in my business. I'm making some sales, but it's mostly wholesale. And then they're like, but I don't really have time to make content because I'm stuck fulfilling wholesale orders. And to me, that tells me that you have a product that is not actually made for wholesale. A product that is made for wholesale is oftentimes manufactured, is oftentimes sent to your house completed, where you don't have to actually make it. Having a pricing structure that fits for a wholesale or for a handmade small batch business is going to be really hard to actually sell and make good profit as a wholesale style company. Wholesale is not fit for every product and every brand. And I think a lot of small businesses want to be in stores and they just want to make sales, and they can see that that makes sense. But yeah, of course that company is going to want this cute, new, unique small business to sell them a product that they're making 50% profit on, but you're only making 10%. That doesn't really make sense at the end of the day. So we need to look at your profits. We need to look at your time. Is your time all cooped up in making all of these wholesale orders with low profit, that you don't have time to actually build your business for the business that you want to have, where you are actually making items where you're actually making sales with full profit on those items? If your wholesale orders are kind of running your life, but they're not actually bringing in profit, they're not actually allowing you to grow your business, is it actually worth it? Are your wholesale orders actually converting into lifelong customers, into repeat customers? It's really hard to have a wholesale order going to a boutique or going to a store actually convert into a customer, because that person has no connection with you other than they already own your product. So it's actually hard. You know how many steps that person has to take to then go to your social and then go to your website and buy from you, try to find you. They'd be better off just going and trying to find another option for that. So yes, you might make a lot of sales wholesale, but is it actually building your business for longevity? It's a short-term fix. Most of the time, it's a short-term fix to bring in sales, but it's not bringing in profit. A lot of times it's actually taking time away for you to actually build the business that you really want to have. Wholesale is great, but your sales, your profit, your time. It all has to build to be the business that you are really looking to have. It has to allow you to really flourish in the other levels of your business, to actually work on your business and not just in it. You are in a really scary place if you are making low profit on all of your sales, but all of your time is up in those really low profit items as well. Like I said, it is really hard for a handmade small batch company to really make wholesale make sense for them, especially in the beginning. So I want to talk about where wholesale is really often utilized. Wholesale works really well for somebody that might have a product that has a really high profit margin. I would say over 75 to 80%, with all of your labor, operating expenses, overhead costs, and your supplies all within there. Wholesale works really well for somebody that has a product manufactured that doesn't take any of their time, other than kind of dropping it off. That doesn't take much overhead. It really is just, your marketing and your sales, your website kind of overhead cost. Wholesale works really well for somebody that is okay to put a little bit more of their own personal money and take a little bit of the cut on their profit up front to not really get a lot of money to come back into their business. I say wholesale is more of like a second income stream after your business starts to really perform. When you are selling something wholesale, what you're utilizing it for is more of a mass market approach, is when wholesale really should be used, is when when you have basically invested in building your own community, in getting your sales high enough, having kind of supplemental income from your own direct to consumer, that going wholesale is the mass market approach. Is like, okay, now I'm making things at such high volume that it actually makes sense for me to go wholesale. I'm making things at such high volume that my costs are so low. We've streamlined the operations so much that we can actually afford to do that. And so I want to kind of go through this with you. Something that I think a good case study here is looking at the soda brand Poppi. Now, I know Poppi's kind of like in the news right now. They just sold to Pepsi. They had the whole vending machine fiasco. If you are on TikTok, you probably saw that. But Poppi sells healthy sodas. They basically have low sugar. They have like probiotics, whatever, prebiotics, who knows, one of the two. And they started as like a niche brand. Basically, they built a really strong community of like the wellness girlies that really missed having a soda because they didn't want that amount of sugar. They built a really strong brand awareness online. They built a really strong direct to consumer brand through social media. They built a really strong like website presence that people were going and buying Poppi at first right through their website, only through their website. They were doing limited edition drops. They were doing small batch drops, but they were doing small direct to consumer drops. Why? Because that is where they had the highest profit. When you're a startup, you have to figure out and make decisions how you can make decisions that are going to bring you the most amount of sales that allow you to actually scale your business and have the infrastructure to do so. So they did that for a while. Then they started getting in some like niche little stores. Maybe they were in like an Erewhon, maybe they were in like a Natural Grocers. They were in some more like niche stores, because they were starting to get the manufacturing down from the direct to consumer sales. They invested back into their business, invested back into the manufacturing and the infrastructure that it takes to actually mass market, mass create products, lowering their costs every time, lower the labor it takes, kind of automating that process with, in full warehouses and all of that. They started to get into smaller kind of natural grocers. They did that. They kept on building their community. They were supplementing some of the profit within those natural grocer stores with all of the direct to consumer. Their website, what were their biggest sales? Now they're in every grocery store. You can go to any grocery store. We have Fred Meyer. We can go to a Super Value, whatever. You can find a Poppi in pretty much every store. They did just get bought by Pepsi, so they probably joined the Pepsi kind of fulfillment distribution center, started to get into more stores. Pepsi saw that they were really getting bought really well in stores, and then they took this mass market approach, and now they got bought by Pepsi for $2 billion. So what this tells you is is they first grew when they're with a way in a selling structure that their profit margin was as high as possible, because then they could invest it back into their business. They built a community. They didn't jump right to wholesale. They might have been in some local area, wherever they were from. They might have been local. They might have done some markets, maybe, but that was in the short term. That was a short-term gain to really get like kind of proof of concept in the beginning of your business, in the growing phases of your business. Getting wholesale, going to markets is really more of market research to see what sells, getting proof of concept to see what sells, see if people like the packaging, and then you sell direct to consumer where you can get the most amount of profit. And then when you start to have mass amounts of numbers where $1 a can actually does add up when you're selling 1 million cans a day, that all of a sudden starts to add up, and that is okay. But when you're running a smaller business in the growing phases of your business, it's hard to sell wholesale because that $1 or that $100 is not going to sustain your business by making $1 a purchase. You need something that's going to make $6 a purchase, or, above and beyond, over and over and over again. Because again, if your average order value online and in person is $100, and taking that same kind of pricing structure of a 50% wholesale, you are then online. If somebody buys $100 from you, you're making $60. If your profit margin is 60%, you're making $60 on that $100. If you are selling wholesale and someone buys $100 of your items, you're only making $10 on that if you're selling wholesale, because it costs you too much to make your product to actually make wholesale make sense. So to the person that originally submitted this, she said, I got the blanket advice from somebody that said I should try to get in as many wholesale opportunities as possible, yet I'm getting into wholesale opportunities, I'm having cash flow issues, giving people 50% off of my products, I'm spending all of my time on it, and I feel like I'm not making any money. What is your take on this? My take is that if you have a handmade product that is really high labor, if you have a product that you are making small batch, and that the profit margin is not 75 to 80%, it probably does not make sense for you to be in a wholesale store yet. What it makes sense for you to do is to double down on building your own community, because sure, it's okay to make $1 here and there, but your time is precious, especially in the beginning, in the growing phases, because a lot of times you're working a 9 to 5, or you have your kids at home, you don't have a team. Your time is so precious. You're spending all of this time fulfilling this order that you're only making 10% profit on, maybe, and then you're not actually ever, it feels like you're like spinning your wheels and never able to actually catch up. So if you are in that boat, I recommend doubling down on building your own community. You will never regret building an online community around your brand, building a ride or die community around your brand. It's going to absolutely pay off tenfold, because those people are going to talk about you. They're going to share about you. They love you. They're going to buy from you over and over again. They're going to buy from you at full price. They're going to buy from you at an amount that like actually makes sense, where you're making solid profit on that purchase. And so this is something that you don't actually want to do. A lot of times you actually want to try to build your online presence first, and you're utilizing wholesale as more of an expansion strategy. When you start to have mass amount of numbers, that those people are going to, where those sales aren't going to be 100 at a time, it's going to be 1,000 at a time, and that actually makes sense. You have to have a product that is scalable. You have to have a product that is being kind of manufactured most of the time, or at least that kind of comes almost finished, so it doesn't actually take a lot of your time to make wholesale make sense for you. And if you do have a product that has high profit margin, you're like 85%, maybe 80, 85%, you are having it manufactured, sent directly to your house, like sure, that makes sense, because you're still making, 30, 35% profit, which isn't great, but it's still, you will always feel the efficiency when you're growing online, because for one video that you can make online that is going to bring in sales for you, if you have 1 week of really solid social media, you can make $3,000 in sales with a 60% profit margin, as opposed to trying to sell something at a 10% profit. So my feedback to you is that taking general business advice, cookie cutter business advice, is very dangerous. I unfortunately see it all the time, that people are selling wholesale, or that people have priced their products wrong because they were told to do so they were listening to X, Y, and Z, or they hired somebody. but you need to have custom business advice, and having people look at your business to look at what your product, every industry is nuanced, every business is nuanced, how you build your business is very nuanced, and your strategy has to fit your long-term goal, your current business, and what you're really trying to build for longevity. Just like markets, you hear me talk about markets not really being a business growth strategy. Wholesale is not a business growth strategy. It's kind of like a short-term supplemental strategy to make maybe a little bit of money, but again, it's not the most efficient way for you to make money. Your most efficient way to make money is to build an online presence and really grow from there. Just like markets, a lot of times wholesale is a short-term fix. It's like that short-term dopamine of like, sweet, I just made $600, but you're not actually profiting a lot of money. It looks great on paper. It looks great kind of in your mind in the emotional way, but it doesn't actually look great when we start doing any math to it. And so I hope this was helpful for you. Of course, we're going to keep this conversation going within my community, the Small Business Cafe. It's our free podcast community to continue this conversation, talk a little bit more about the implementation and the integration of it into your business. If you are wondering if this is good for you, click the link in the show notes and join the cafe. You can ask me directly in there. I will be responding to those questions today. Otherwise, you can always send me a DM on Instagram and say cafe, and I will send it over there as well. My Instagram is at This Is Madison Page. I hope you have a lovely day. I hope that this was helpful for you. I know it's a little bit of a spicy take, and I hope that it is something that was really portrayed in a good way. So I love you. I'm rooting for you. I'm in your corner always. Let me know if you have any questions. Make sure that you follow the episode, the podcast show here. Make sure that you follow the show, because I know so many of you are coming back each and every week and you're not following the show. Click that follow or the subscribe. We put out new episodes every Tuesday and Friday. It helps me. It helps you. It helps other people see my show. When you do, just click that follow button. It takes 2 seconds. Thank you so much. I hope you guys have a great day, and I will chat with you inside of the Small Business Cafe.